Well, Mr. Nicholas Rems, thank you for joining us today on Ruction Nation. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come down and see us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
So, Nick, can you walk us through what your current role is?
I am a superintendent for A&J Construction. So we're a framing contractor, turnkey framing contractor. Really do everything from obviously production, stick frame, framing, siding, window, door install, WRB install, Tyvek, zip. I mean, there's so many different WRB segments in the world today, but in short, that's my role. So pretty much supervise, exterior, interior framing crews from beginning to end.
And what kind of jobs are you working on?
All multifamily related. I don't bounce around all too much. Our owner typically wants us, focalized on one project, which is good. So our main focus has always been multifamily.
Gotcha. And you are currently working on a 5-story building?
4-story.
4-story
and 3-story. Yep.
Three.
All one building. Yeah.
Yep.
We stepped down to 3.
And what phase are you in right now?
We are, depends on who you ask, but we're wrapped up with production framing. Yeah, some of the superintendents, they always have a smart ass answer as you're never done.
Sure.
But practically done with production framing, ongoing with siding, window installation, shim and shave, and then the guys got obviously drywall production. I don't really care all that much about drywall unless there's an issue, which sometimes there is, but yeah, our framing scope is practically wrapped up. We're pretty much kind of towards the tail end of wrapping up siding and getting the WRB buttoned up and everything else. So we're getting towards the finish line.
And how long have you been in this current role?
Almost 3 years. Really the first portion of my career, I've been, doing construction for, kind of from a superintendent or assistant superintendent role. I started in the GC world, local GCs, bounced around 2 different GCs. That was really my first 5-6 years of my career. And then our owner called me one day. He was actually our subcontractor on one of the jobs, and I was supervising the front end. And he called me. He said, "Nick, I kind of need a guy like you, fighting these GC battles. Is this something you'd maybe be interested in?" And, I thought about it. I was like, coming from the GC world, going into framing, it's, and I really thought in hindsight that coming from the GC world, going to a sub, it was going to be easier. I think people kind of look at, it's less to manage.
Less aspects of the job to think about.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to worry about mechanical, plumbing, all this other jazz. And so, yeah, called me one day. Hey, this is something you'd be interested in. I sat on it for a few weeks and was like, okay, well, it was definitely something I was interested in. And knowing, I kind of knew a little bit of his crews just from working with him, and I liked his management standpoint as the owner of the company. And I kind of looked at it as a challenge. I think we all do in construction, go put your feet in and something you don't know, and interested me. And I said, hey, why not? I'll give it a shot, and kind of took off from there. So I've been enjoying it thus far. It's definitely not easier. I will tell you that from what I originally thought it would be. I still really find myself managing just as much as I did, just because our scope of work is so big. It didn't get any easier, unfortunately, but that's the joy of our job, is you never know what you're going to walk into every day. There's going to be something that's a fire drill, or, you can wake up and expect the day to go a certain way. It never goes that way, but that's why I love doing construction.
Were you a superintendent in the GC world as well?
Yeah, I was with Catamount and Graystar.
Gotcha. Okay.
How did you find those 2 outfits?
Really, I worked right out of school. And interestingly enough, and it probably surprised everyone who ever listened to this, I got my degree in political science
Hmm.
from college. Everyone's like, you're going to be like, what the hell is this guy doing in construction? And how did he land here? Um,
I feel like that's not that uncommon.
no,
I mean, maybe that specific situation, but just not having the degree that pertains to what you're working in.
yeah.
I think it's pretty common.
Yeah, I mean it's relatively common. But yeah, right out of school or I was in the process of applying to law school, and my dad owns a window and door installation company. So all through high school and college, I was installing windows, unloading windows, hard laborious work, and I think that for my dad. And now in hindsight, it kind of built my work ethic and integrity of, hey, this isn't going to be, roses and dandelions. This is how
Right.
the real world is. But I also enjoyed it. And that kind of gave me, my first kind of perspective in construction and how things go, and things aren't ever going to go according to plan, but you got to be quick on your feet and be able to adjust accordingly. And I really, really liked that aspect. And, my dad sat me down and he was like, are you sure, this is what you want to, are you sure you want to go to law school, do this, come out with a bunch of student loans? And that's kind of the thing, even nowadays, I have a bunch of friends who are coming out with a bunch of student loans. And I think the market, maybe not the market, but even the stigma on college degrees is kind of going somewhat away from what it was maybe 7-8 years ago, where you have to go to college, you got to get a degree to be successful. And whatever price it takes, well, you got to deal with it. And when he sat me down, I was like, hey, you're going to come out with a bunch of student loans. Construction's kind of been in our family. You could make a good career and a good living in construction. And I kind of really thought about that for a few weeks. And he's like, kind of just throw your application out there, see what happens. And in short, I landed with a small GC. I'm not even sure if they're around anymore. They're the Augusta Group. And I was pretty much just, as a PE for them. They gave me an opportunity, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to, I'm going to roll with this, give it my best effort, and kind of see what happens, see if I enjoy it. Enjoyed it. I was with them for a year and a half, 2 years. And then my brother was working on a Catamount job, and the exterior super was just running wild, just couldn't, he just didn't have enough guys out there. And ran into my brother one day, probably just installing windows, like, hey, my brother kind of saw the writing of this guy's just losing his mind trying to manage all these different aspects. He's like, hey, I really need an exterior guy. Do you know anybody? My brother was like, my brother probably, give my brother a call. He'd probably be interested. And so lead super gave me a call. I said, hey, you can sit you down and have an interview. Had an interview, and they gave me an opportunity, and then got out with Catamount as an exterior super, and kind of went from there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's really cool, from just not knowing where you wanted to go to where you're at today.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah, we've had actually pretty similar trajectories. I started out as a PE as well. Do you feel like you were naturally kind of drawn to more of the field side? Or could you have gone either way on that?
I think I was more drawn to the field side. I mean, I like interacting with the guys on site. Not only your own crew, but obviously different subcontractors. I really like that more personable aspect, and I think a lot of people looking at our job, think that we're just dealing with just construction issues all day. And I think a lot of our job is really more so even managing personalities.
100%.
And really knowing how to, you're going to react, and people react to different things differently. How you motivate the plumber or the electrician or whoever it may be, or, if you really got to get into somebody, if they're 2 weeks late on something, how you approach one guy is going to be a completely different approach on how you approach a different guy, because they're all going to react differently. And knowing how to read kind of that environment and that guy, as a person. And I think, unfortunately, in construction, depending on who it is, just kind of take the personality aspect, or really the personable aspect out of it. It's like, hey, we got a job to do. I don't care. Screw you. Screw this. We got to get the job done. and just not knowing that maybe the guy was late because he had to take his daughter to the hospital, the night before or whatever it is. It's not like, hey, what the hell? Why didn't you get this done?
Yep.
Um, and and really, I enjoyed that aspect of it. And you kind of have to obviously learn that over the course of your career of, knowing kind of how to read different subs and even your own crew and different aspects on, hey, what's going to motivate this guy and what's going to maybe trigger him, and he's going to throw his hands up in the air and say, F you, F this job, I'm walking away. And
Right.
obviously you want to avoid that, but you have to know how to approach different people in different ways. And like I said, I kind of learned that. And I think in the field, we obviously, we have that every day and we're always going to. And I really liked that aspect of being able to talk to these guys and solve problems. And of course, we always want to leave the office out of it, but that doesn't always happen. But just being able to solve problems on the fly with these guys that, we can all talk about it holistically and not just, hey, I want to do it this way, but it's also going to screw this guy. It's, hey, let's all get together here. If I do it this way, hey, plumber, is this going to screw you? Yeah, Nick, that will screw me. Okay, well, what way can I do it that won't screw you?
Mm-hmm.
And being able to work together. And I really like that aspect of being in the field and having that.
I mean, you're in management, just like being Cody. You're 75% of your day is just problem solving.
Yeah, absolutely.
At least, right?
At least, for sure.
I mean, that's the challenge. That's the stressful part of it. It's also the fun part.
Yeah.
It's why we do it.
Yeah.
You're overcoming different problems and challenges every single day. Is that the most satisfying part to you?
I would say it is. I mean, I think it's hard, beginning a job and seeing, and trying to see the finish line at the end. But when you're getting there and you can finally,
Mhm.
that job finally is done, you can look back at it and you got, I built a senior living facility a few years back, and our lead super kind of put into perspective of, take pride in your work. Your grandma could be living here in 2 years or whatever it may be. And most people kind of just look at a job as a means to an end of, hey,
Yeah.
let's get this done. Let's get paid. Let's get the hell out of here. And maybe don't understand the totality of, hey, you could easily have, who knows, maybe your sister or your grandma or whoever living in this apartment building or the senior living facility.
Yep.
Like, let's take some pride in our work, and, turn over a product that obviously whoever our client is happy for, but also understand that, hey, you could easily have your grandma living in this place. If her FCU goes out, what the hell is going to happen? Make sure
Yeah.
the thing goes in right and you have, AC and whatnot. So yeah, I think, being able to stand back at the end of a job and be like, hey, we built this thing is something to take a lot of pride on. And I think a lot of people do, but I think there's still, there's always going to be people that it's a means to an end, but it's really not. I mean, there's a bigger picture, and you're, contributing to the community and everything else, that everyone can hopefully look back on and the city can look back on and be like, hey, this is a great building. We got great people living around here. The community's happy about it.
I think it's pretty easy to spot the people that really care
Yeah.
and take pride in their work, and the people that, are just showing up physically and trying to earn that paycheck.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's very noticeable. Do you have a proudest moment in your career?
I don't know if I necessarily have a proudest moment. I mean, I haven't been a hero on any jobs per se. I like obviously problem solving, and really, I think unfortunately over the past really 6 years, like unfortunately, I think the drawings have gotten worse, for lack of a better word, and I think there's a multitude of reasons for that I could get into, but I think given obviously if you don't have a complete set of drawings, there's going to be more issues, and being able to be someone that the guys depend on, hey, if this happens and we need an answer and there's 4 different ways to tackle this problem, and there's 4 other trades that are coming behind you that it may also affect, what can we do? Like I said, that's a holistic approach to work together and figure it out. But I haven't had any crazy things that I can think of off the top of my head that, I saved the project on. I mean, there's little stuff every day that, we work through,
Mhm.
and and we figure out and get a solution to. But no, unfortunately, if there were something, I'd easily like to be braggadocious about it. No, just kidding. But put my cape on. Um, but no, but like I said, I think unfortunately the drawings have gotten worse, and I think one is with the AI and everything coming out, all these GCs have BIM, have Revit, have all this stuff, and really I think there's starting to become an over reliance on it. Of hey, this software is going to solve all our problems. It's going to find all the clashes. And there's people who are specifically hired just to do BIM, but I think a lot of them miss really like and, and I think that like the really good drafters and architects and consultants are starting to die out, and I think and we all know, and if no one knows, I mean, the baby boomers are all going to retire who are really, really good superintendents in the next 20 years. And you're going to be left with, a bunch of, early 30s, mid 20s guys who got to take over. And
Yeah, I mean that's one of the main reasons why we're doing this podcast is we can kind of see the writing on the wall. Like this is only going to get harder. The labor pool is only going to get younger and
yeah,
be shrinking, not only in the trades but also in our positions in management as well.
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
it's really time. I mean, people do need to step up, and we do need to encourage the younger generations to jump in and
yeah. And not just depend, like I said, on software. It's like, I think, sure, the software might be able to, see a few clashes, but I think like the practical constructability of something is probably what gets missed because, sure, we could take a Harvard grad and he could be an expert at BIM, but if he's never maybe been in the field or doesn't have, a mentor in front of him that's been in the field, like that practical constructability of how it's actually going to happen in the field is kind of taken out. And I think a lot of those models get missed just from a practical constructability aspect.
Yeah, there's no replacement for repetition on the job and actual hands-on, like being able to be hands-on over so many years. There's
Yeah.
nothing that can replace that.
Yeah. And obviously we all know, I mean, schedules have gotten tighter, budgets have gotten tighter. I mean, you guys are probably receiving drawings, I mean, I know for sure these architects and engineers are getting pushed, because the client wants to market this thing and turn it over as quick as they can. And they obviously put that pressure on in the front end on the architects and engineers. Hey, get these drawings out, get it to permitting, get this thing done. And the drawings are never fully complete. Or we're starting construction and they maybe just issued the IFC set, but half of it is still schematic.
Mhm.
And next thing you know, all the liability falls on the field. I mean, I've seen more notes in the drawings over the last 3 years that say coordinate in the field than I have before. Because again, I think it's budget schedule. They're getting pushed. They want to push these drawings out. Hey, let's push the liability onto the contractors, which isn't fair in my opinion, but that's kind of how the world's turned into in construction. It's hey, get this thing out, get it in production,
Yep.
whatever issues we run into, field's got to deal with it, get it done. But again, that creates more pressure on the field guys. And that's why, you see in construction, I read an article a few weeks ago, like construction's like the top 3 highest suicide rates, in out of all the industries. It's like, why is that? Is it because of this pressures or because of these unrealistic budgets and schedule and not being able to take the foot off the gas and have a break? And even in one of the companies I worked for, it had unlimited PTO. Is how they advertised it, and it never works. Because I think a lot of the people that work in our industry, they want to get a job done. A lot of them take pride in their work, and they want to go, or they really don't have a choice but to go because they're getting pushed.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an insurmountable amount of pressure, and they go home and crack open 12 beers and get into whatever else to
Try to fill the void with something
alleviate
else.
some of that pressure, which is unfortunate. And hopefully it changes, but there's got to be a lot of things that happen prior to that.
So with the notes that you're seeing in the last 3 years, just coordination in field, as a turnkey framing operation, how do you guys dissect that? What's the mentality when you receive an IFC set and it has a bunch of those?
It it's unfortunate because it forces not only us, but like really all the subs who have something maybe going in that area. You got to look through, instead of being able to look at, a plumbing sheet, a mechanical sheet, and a framing sheet. Now you got to go to the submittals, or you're waiting on a submittal, that.
You want to turn this a little bit just so you can face?
Yeah. Yeah, so Cody can see.
Yeah, I want to see your.
So you kinda
I want to
looking
see your
at it, corner
smile.
of your eye.
But no, I think it honestly, it kind of creates more havoc and more, to a certain degree, more busy work because, all these subs now are searching for submittals that don't pertain to them. And not to say every sub is an expert in using Autodesk or Procore, but finding this stuff. But a lot of them, if they're new, don't know where to look for, a balcony rail submittal or what subcontractors may be turning that in. So I think, the notes of, coordinating the field, it creates more work. Sure, it allows you at the same time to understand, the entirety of your scope of work and making sure you get things right the first time. It's like I'm dealing with one right now on, balcony blocking 4 rails, because the engineer, the structural engineer, built the balconies with certain perimeter kind of outrigging beams and a certain outer beam was, a 3-ply, perimeter beam. And then the out beam was a 2-ply, but we got a 6x6 base plate, but they didn't call out, a 6x6 base plate isn't going to fit on 2 2x12s. And, they didn't mention in any of the drawings that, hey, we're going to need a mid block on these mid rails here to support that. And the only way to find it was to go to the balcony rail submittal, which was, 3 weeks late to begin with. And then you're just fighting the clock. You're waiting for a submittal, trying to get an answer, but you also got to build balconies and get the building up. So it's like, it's this fine balance of, okay, what can we do to keep going? But also, is this going to end up screwing us 2 weeks from now, when, now the dirt guy's starting in the spot where you got to now add blocks at the balcony.
Yeah, I want to back up just a little bit to how we got here. We were talking, or you were talking about the stress, the pressure. I can imagine you're juggling in your position right now. You're juggling your crews and who's doing what, and you're trying to hit the schedule, trying to stay under budget or within budget.
Yeah.
Plus you have your personal life that you're juggling on your other hand.
Sure.
How do you personally deal with that stress and pressure? Do you have like a routine or
not
a
necessarily
weekend kind of getaway type deal?
on the weekends, I love to play golf and kind of just take my, take myself completely out of construction. Sure, as much as we'd like to turn our phones off, it doesn't always work that way. But I think, again, as you go through the course of your career, you got to just learn how to shut it off. Kind of just once you leave that job site, hey, try to keep that phone down, unless it's an absolute emergency, and learn how to just turn it off. Because the last thing you want to do, and I'm guilty of it just as much as anyone else, is going home to your girlfriend or whatnot who might be in a great mood, and you're already pissed as hell because you got into it with the roofer, 2 hours ago about some bullshit about TPO and tapering it and whatever else it could be. And next thing you know, you're pissed off at her, and then it just creates an adversarial relationship between you and whomever it may be. So I don't necessarily have a routine I get into. I kind of just learned, once my car leaves that job site, just turn it off. If you gave 100% that day, that's all you can really ask for out of yourself. And if your crew did the same, that's all you can do. There's always going to be the next day, and just learning how to just shut it off, I think was my biggest, um, kind of factor of not going home and wanting to kick the dog, so to say. But
I mean, it's something we all
I think that's
continuously learn.
yeah,
It's something that I'm still working on, but I do remember the first few years, especially, were tough. Like I had no idea how to turn it off and walk
yeah,
away and take your mind off of it,
exactly.
off of work.
Yeah, or wanting to send, someone will send you an email at 4:30 on a Friday, about something you fucked up. And especially me, I want to fire back, and it's like, Nick, you take a step back. Is it really worth jacking up your weekend? You're going to be thinking about it all weekend. You're probably going to piss that guy off who you're going to see Monday. He's going to be waiting, to take your head off Monday as well. He's probably going to be thinking about it all weekend. It's like, is it really worth, shooting off a fire email and stuff like that you're like, you know what? It's not worth it. I got to work shoulder to shoulder with these guys Monday. I mean, throughout the duration of a job, we spend more time, with each other, frankly, than we do with our families. And we're there
Yeah.
10, 12 hours a day. So, it's not worth creating an adversarial relationship and pissing each other off who you're going to be with for the next 6 months, shoulder to shoulder. You're going to need a favor from that guy, or he's going to need a favor from you down the line, so let's keep the relationship civil. You're going to have disagreements, but again, learning how to manage that, manage the personality of each other, it goes a long way.
Yeah, it's phenomenal advice.
Yeah.
From what you've seen at the outfit that you work for right now, do you guys pay or put any of your guys through apprenticeships?
No. A lot of the guys that, the crews that we've hired, and we typically have the same, we know our crews well. They've worked on a lot of our jobs. So we tend to stick with what we know, and who we know can, contribute and be able to meet schedule and pay attention to the details. So, short answer, no, but also I think, I try to be a mentor. The only reason I know as much as I do, and I don't really know all that much, but the only reason I know as much as I do is because I had a great mentor, coming up. And I think, and that goes to say, I mean, the future generation, again, it's like, these guys are getting out of the industry, who are baby boomers, who are 40 or 50, hoping that they're mentoring this younger generation and showing them the ropes. And I try to do the same, on the job side. I mean, these guys, typically, they're just getting paid per the square foot. They want to frame, they want to, get paid and get the hell out of there. And really just teaching them again that, hey, what you're doing, there's a bigger goal at the end of the line. And, there's going to be people living here who are going to be grateful for the work you did and take pride in it and try to avoid shortcuts. And so I really just try to be a mentor to the guys, and try to keep that, and pass that aspect onto them, and hopefully they can pass it down to the next guy. Cause I think really the industry lacks that. Everyone kind of just wants to get the job done, get the hell out of there. Don't really, care about who's coming after them. If it's going to be the next superintendent or whoever it may be. So in that aspect, I try to take a lot of pride in that, mentoring the guys, just not only, from a construction standpoint, but from a personal aspect of, don't be a hothead, don't be an asshole out there. You're going to work with this guy on the next job.
Mhm.
So more
Yep.
than likely, or you're going to see him again. This is a small world in construction. So, always try to take some pride and have some respect for the other guy next to you.
Would you say, for the most part, there's a general level of respect among all the tradesmen on site, all the foremen, superintendents, for all the
I don't know,
trades?
man. Everyone's got big egos in our world. I mean, not everyone, but I think, people. I mean, there's a lot of people that just have that personality of, hey, I'm a know-it-all. I've worked with plenty of superintendents with other companies who think they're a know-it-all, and you're going to do it my way or the highway,
Mm-hmm.
and screw you or your ideas. And typically it never works out that way, because you're going to piss 20 people off, down the road. So it's really just developing an open mind, and taking your ego. Sure, I might be, yeah, we're a framing expert, um, and everyone looks at that like, oh, well, you're a framing expert, you should know everything about framing. I don't. I'm learning stuff every day, and sometimes I'm learning stuff from the electrician of, yeah, hey, don't put this here because I got to go here. That truss roadblock's going to be in my way, or whatever it may be.
Well,
Uh,
every job is different.
yeah,
There's new codes coming out constantly. There's new products, new techniques, new ways to do things.
yeah.
Yeah, you're never gonna know it all.
No, and you got to keep an open mind. I think some people are stuck in their way. Probably maybe the older generation. They just, I mean, they didn't have the resources that we do today, and they probably really don't want to use resources because they've been doing it for 30 years. And I hear the guys every day on site, I've been doing this for 20 years. We're doing it my way. Fuck you. It's like, it doesn't mean you've been doing it right, man. So,
For sure.
But, yeah, it's just learning through trial and error and learning from other tradesmen. I learned more in my career just from talking to the mechanical guy and the plumber of, hey, why'd you route that way, or why'd you do this? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to be more than helpful to tell you, hey, this is why I did it. I couldn't go here, and you're like, oh shit, I'd never thought about that. And you can carry that on to the next job. And a lot of people are kind of, and maybe people are shy and whatever it may be. They don't want to talk, if it's an apprentice or whoever it may be, they don't want to talk to lead super because they're going to think they're dumb or whatever it may be. But yeah, just having an open mind and understanding that, everyone's here to help. Just don't be afraid to ask a question, because, you're going to have to ask it once, and that's probably going to be the only time you have to ask it, because you can carry that knowledge on with you to the next job or throughout the course of your career.
Yeah, 100%. So since you guys don't offer apprenticeships, say there's a high schooler listening in right now who doesn't want to go to college per se.
Yeah.
But
Or a college grad.
Yeah, or a college grad. And they want to...
It's a younger person.
Yeah, or a political science grad.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or an older person. They just have an interest of framing. They drove
Yeah.
past some job, one of your guys' jobs, and they're like, that looks like something I'd be interested in doing. What advice do you have for that individual?
One, I would say, obviously there's so many different trade schools, nowadays. I'd say, that are a hell of a lot cheaper than college. And like I said, you can make, you can make a killing and make great money doing construction for everyone who's out there. But yeah, I would say, obviously look around, be open to, the trade schools, and a different avenue if you don't want to take that avenue. Again, sure, you can always call me. We're always looking for some good quality people who I can take under my wing, or whoever can take under their wing. But, you just got to go out there and explore. I'm not, asking anyone to show up to a job trailer and say, hey, who's hiring in here? Because usually that never works. You're like, hey, get the hell out of here. We got other things to do. But just be open and try to put yourself out there and get to know people in the industry. Like I said, it's a small world. So, you emailing, a framing company like us, or emailing Confluence or Graystar or GE Johnson or whoever it may be, and just getting your name out there, and someone's going to give you an opportunity at one point or another. It might not be right off the bat, and you might not be a project manager right away. You're going to start, putting in studs, putting in blocking, and maybe not doing the pretty stuff that, you want to do. If and you really got to make a career choice. Do you want to be kind of reviewing contracts and, approving change orders, or do you want to be more hands-on in the field and solving problems in that aspect? So I think, that you got to kind of make that choice, preferably early on. But I've also, some of the best project managers or project executives I've worked with came from the field. And a lot of them didn't have a college degree. One of my best lead supers I ever worked with went to bakery school for a year and a half or 2 years, literally after high school. He went to bakery school. He's phenomenal. He's a phenomenal baker. But one of his buddies was doing framing and maybe still is. And, he ended up just being the blocking guy for the framing crew, literally just installing blocking, ADA grab bar blocking, handrail blocking, whatever it may be. Just start off doing blocking, worked his way up. Guys figured, hey, this guy's pretty good at installing blocking. Let's have him start snapping lines. Next thing you know, started snapping lines and kind of worked his way up. The trajectory just kind of went, you just have to be a little bit better and want to work a little bit harder than the next guy in this world. And it will take you extremely, extremely far. Just taking that next extra step never gets unnoticed. People might not see it right away, but it will get noticed, and someone will see someone like that and want to have them on their crew for the duration of the job or the career or whatever it may be. So yeah, really, like I said, I'd say look at your trade schools, start putting your name out there, shoot a resume out there. Again, your resume is not going to be perfect. I had political science on my resume. What construction firm is going to hire a guy with a political science degree with minimal construction experience? And again, this company took a shot with me and I made the most of it and ran with it. And here I am now. So, yeah, don't be afraid to throw your name out there and try to create an opportunity for yourself.
I do want to know what the appeal or desire for getting a political science.
I wanted to go to law school.
What kind of law would you have studied?
Probably criminal defense. Be a trial attorney, argue with people all day. As much as I try to avoid that in construction, that's what I wanted to do. But also help people. Obviously, criminal defense. You're trying to help people who are arguably in the worst times of their life, trying to find light at the end of the tunnel, so to say. So originally that was kind of my trajectory, and it's helped. Reading contracts and being more in writing. I mean, you have to, as you progress through construction and especially in management, you have to be very good at reading and you got to be very good at writing, because all the I got you notes will always be in a little box at the lower right hand or upper right hand of a corner, and that's where you lose your ass. And so looking for those minute details and getting that degree helped me in that aspect. And obviously, reading contracts and kind of knowing what to redline and whatnot. And obviously there's always going to be a level of compromise that you have to agree to, but it's definitely helped in aspects throughout my career.
What's one thing that you wish you knew when you first started in this industry that you know now?
I started off, I wouldn't say I was a hothead, but I was fiery, I guess, so to say. And again, you can't approach, and I did approach every situation. If someone did something wrong, of why the hell did you do it this way? You should have done it this. You should have got done by this time. And I was fiery, and it never worked. And my superintendent had to take me to the side one day. He said, Nick, you don't have to be the loudest guy in the room, and it's never helpful, and it's never gonna, very, very rarely does it ever work to where people agree with you. It's just going to create more havoc in the room. And that was probably one of my biggest things, is I kind of just had a short temper, a short fuse, and just want to light people up, whether justified or unjustifiably so. I thought I was right, and it was my way or the highway. And I quickly learned that that's not the case. There are 4 different ways to skin a cat in this world. And you pissing that guy off is not going to help anything. So probably that aspect. I had to learn that, and I did, and I obviously approach situations differently now.
So what is your approach now to a situation?
I'd say just hearing both sides out, just letting the guy finish talking. I feel like always in construction, everyone wants to just someone's trying to explain something. So, oh,
Mhm.
no, you're not doing this. It just always creates a cluster of someone talking over somebody. Um, Nowadays, I'd say it's, I want to listen to what their solution is fully, understand it, get their perspective of why they want to do it, and, take that and whatever solution I had, say, okay, well, you know, here's where you're coming from, here's where I'm coming from. What's it going to take for us to meet in the middle here? Or, is someone maybe going to get somewhat screwed one way or the other? Um, so I'd say that's probably how I approach things. I usually now I kind of take a seat back and really listen more so than really talk, get everyone's 2 cents in the room. Um, and then give my 2 cents. Cause you don't want to be the first to fire off, and yeah, you can, I mean, absolutely. But again, it usually just turns into an argument of who's right, who's wrong, who's been doing it longer, et cetera, et cetera. So I've taken more of a standoffish approach in getting everyone's 2 cents and then coming to a logical solution that works with everybody. That doesn't always happen. But again, I mean, construction you're going to have to compromise. You probably compromise every day on what works best for everybody. So I'd say, in short, I probably wasn't that short. That's probably my managerial approach to
Yeah, it's great.
any
Great
conflict.
advice.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through just a typical day in your world currently?
Typical day. Show up, of course, at 6:45 for anyone listening. Might be might be 7:15. But I mean, again, that's kind of I had some leeway. Again, that's kind of what, in the subcontractor world, which, we are now mainly, get a little bit more leeway. I'm not gonna have to be on site like you guys do for 10, 12 hours a day, staying late for elevator inspections on Saturday, Sunday, and all that jazz. And that's also what kind of sold me on taking the route a little bit. But yeah, standard day, showing up to the job site. Nowadays it's a little bit easier now just because we're done, and when we're just starting and laying out, slabs are getting poured, those days are a lot more hectic. You're getting to the job site early if you got to pour, 6:30, 6:45, if not earlier. Verifying embeds. Typically you're going to do that a few days before. You don't want to be doing it the day of a pour, but verifying embeds, verifying, your COP or chubby smacks are laid out correctly. And then also talking to your crew before they get going on, hey, what's the priority today? Because, the contractor's going to always have a smorgasbord of things that you have to tackle. And knowing what truly to prioritize first on a priority list is going to be key to being successful that day and throughout the remainder of the job. But yeah, I'd say, obviously showing up, laying out the guys, making sure they have everything they need, whether it be lumber, whether it be hardware.
What do you have any advice for anyone listening on laying out a crew of guys for the day?
Yeah, I mean, depends on typically kind of what your role is. For me, I have 2 guys underneath me, who I can lay out, I can tell them, hey, this is what the day looks like. And they're good at allocating their crews accordingly 9 times out of 10. But yeah, I'd say obviously, get the guy on the phone if he's not there, or, when he's there, hey, obviously good morning. Everyone kind of forgot how to say good morning nowadays, and please and thank you in construction. And it goes a long way. So people don't forget that. And again, kind of having your priority list and making sure that they understand that priority list as a whole and what needs to get done, making sure they have everything they need to get it done, and making sure they have the manpower accordingly to get it done. Because, even on, the phase of job I'm in now, I had, 4 months ago, I had 60 framers on site. And I was able to tackle little minuscule stuff. When you have that many guys on site, I can steal 3 framers from a unit for an hour and tackle a bunch of punch work, on the side that I need to do on level 1, although we're production framing on level 4. As the job progresses and you start decreasing on your manpower, there's a fine balance of what needs to get done and how many guys you realistically have to get that done. And so those expectations need to be laid out as well of, hey, the GC wants it done by Thursday. Can we realistically, and I want to agree with, whoever our framing crew is, because I don't want to set them up for failure as, hey, if we got to change 15 door ROs, is it realistic that we can get these changed by Thursday? Because anyone, I could easily tell them, hey, you got to get this done by Thursday and leave, walk away, hopefully it gets done by Thursday. But if he only has, 2 guys because we cut down on our production framing, then there's going to be an issue. It gets to Thursday, he only has 3 done. And next thing you know, the GC's barking up my ass on, hey, what the hell? And that, again, that's starts with me maybe not communicating to the GC about realistic expectations of could that have even gotten done by Thursday? And then that's also me communicating with the framer on, hey, maybe I should have told you to add 4 guys or 5 guys, and I didn't do that. And so you were set up for failure. So that kind of starts with me. So yeah, it starts with realistic expectations, laying out a priority list and looking at the manpower that you have and seeing if that's truly realistic. And if it's not, okay, what can we do that'll work for the both of us and the GC or whoever's asking it, that'll get us to the goal that they want? Or if we can't get there, hey, what can we do to maybe try to get there, or communicate of a different date that everyone can agree on that, hey, that'll still be acceptable. We get it. Your guys' hands are tied. You only have so many guys, because everyone thinks and every GC thinks, hey, you can get more guys, get more guys, get more guys. It's like, okay, well, I can't have 10 guys in a unit. It's never going to be productive. It's like you guys can't have, 10 finishing crews in one unit. They're going to be stepping all over each other. It's never going to happen.
There's a fine balance.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to pause it just for a sec, take a little break.
Yeah.
All right.
So I know that you had mentioned earlier your dad pulled you aside when you were thinking about going to law school.
Yeah.
Beyond the paycheck, what is the most satisfying part about building something with your hands?
For me, in short, looking at that building at the end and say, hey, we built this motherfucker.
Yeah.
Probably that one. And then 2, like I said, I love working through problems and being a problem solver. I really don't think, and it might be biased of me to say, I don't think there's a lot of careers out there that allow you to be such a on the fly problem solver, that can really have a huge effect on a job, or really catching things prior to it, turning into a shit show, for lack of a better word. In our world, you have to be able to think ahead. If you're reactive in this industry, I wouldn't say you're not going to last long. You're going to make mistakes. And the only reason I learned half the stuff I know is from failing God knows how many inspections, how many times, and making sure you don't do that again is key. But yeah, I think the problem solving aspect, I don't think there's a lot of careers out there that allow you to solve as many problems as we do a day. And I personally take a lot of pride in that. And I think a lot of people in our world take a lot of pride in that. So I'd say being able to look at a building at the end of it and say, hey, I contributed, sure, from a framing aspect, we built this thing, but from an electrical standpoint, we put in every one of those wires, every one of those lights, mechanical, we're pretty much, we put in the grease duct, all the unit FCUs, that restaurant's firing because of me. That restaurant's kicking ass. I love that restaurant now, and they might be going into it, every other day. And they contributed to, that company, that restaurant being successful. And they're like, hey, I freaking put my mark on this thing. I kicked ass, and I'm here now drinking a beer in the restaurant that I contributed for. So I'd say those two things are the biggest that I take a lot of pride in. Um, and obviously, like I said, kind of just being a mentor, being able to walk away from some of the issues and talking to some of the guys, and knowing that they're gonna, I might not maybe work with the same framing crew again, but being able to walk away knowing that I told them, information, or I gave them some information that they'll be able to carry on to the next job to make sure they don't maybe make that mistake again, or they can carry on to the next guy and make sure they don't make that mistake. Just from a mentoring standpoint, really.
So on the flip side of being, well, since you're out in the field, I'm sure you get to see some of the characters that are out there.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any good stories that you'd like to share in regards to funny things that happened or funny things that you've heard?
I mean, I have plenty of stories of getting into it with different trades. I got really one of them when I was early on in my career. We were in the process of taking the scaffold down in the courtyard, and the roofer had requested about, let's say, 2 weeks prior to us taking the scaffold down. We gave him a notice. We said, hey guys, in 2 weeks, we're taking the scaffold down, and they still need to put their roof coping or parapet cap on. And they mentioned at the time, just before we sent the notice, that, hey, we want to use the scaffold to put our parapet cap coping on. And we're like, okay, we'll, sent out our notice. Hey, everyone, 2 weeks, get your shit done. That scaffold's coming down. And once it gets down in the courtyard, no lift access, you're hosed, in short. And then, of course, parapet cap doesn't get on. End up taking the scaffold down, just like we said. And that roofing PM comes in hot as hell at me. It was the exterior super. Nick, what the fuck? Why'd you take the scaffold down? I told you 2 weeks ago, leave that shit up. You want to get this job done. You're pressuring me to get this shit done, and you dropped the scaffold? Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, kind of looking over my lead super like he's going to, like, chime in and be like, yeah, Nick, what the hell? And, I'm like, okay, hold on, dude. Literally, go to my computer, print off the email that I sent his company 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, there was your notice. There's that. And, I mean, he was livid at me. And I think my super saw me because, you can only stay patient for so long. I was about to, I wasn't going to get into fists with the guy, but I was like, there was your notice. You sat on it. Now you got to deal with it. Tough shit. Unfortunately, stuff like that happens in construction. But again, gave the guy proper notice to get his stuff together, and came in, a bull in a china shop, wanted to take my head off and, pour me, of course. And again, I think that was the first time in my career, he's like, you don't know shit. You're 20 years old. This is the problem with you guys. Looking over my leads, you're hiring these young guys who don't know shit. And this is what happens. And again, I mean, everyone's always going to back their team, whether it's from a GC standpoint, subcontractor standpoint. And my super ended up getting into his ass of, hey, you're not going to disrespect my boy like that, or we're going to have bigger problems. That was one instance. That wasn't a huge entertaining one by any means. And then on another job, and this is more from an architectural standpoint, but in most of the drawings today, the architect will have, a window detailing section on how to sequence, wrapping the opening, prepping the opening. And we were going over it, and I was kind of going over it with the guys, and it was a Tyvek building. And the way this architect had it sequenced wasn't matching the two Tyvek details that Tyvek has as their standard. Like, they just have pretty much two standard details. If you want a warranty, you got to follow them. Like, no exceptions, unless you ask them and want to go through all that jazz, but it's never worth it. And I go into the GC's office. I'm like, hey guys, I'm letting you know now, these details aren't matching either of Tyvek's details. And I was like, I can do it like this, but know very well when our Tyvek rep comes out, he could say, pound sand, rip the windows out. This isn't per Tyvek. We're not warrantying it. Pretty much throw it in the trash. And again, kind of big ego GC super was like, nope, do it per the detail. This is how we're doing it. Tough shit. And I was like, okay. Next thing you know, we throw in 60 windows. Tyvek rep comes out. We're doing a WRB inspection with a Tyvek rep, super right there. And Tyvek rep's looking over it and he's like, why do you guys have it detailed like this? And, the supers, of course, oh, it's per this detail right here. We have it all right. And Tyvek rep's like, this isn't a warrantable detail that we've tested. We got 2 details in here. Neither of them match it. He's like, this isn't going to work. And Super's losing his shit. What do you mean it's not going to fucking work? I've been doing this for 20 years. You're not going to tell me how it's going to work. We followed the detail. And he's like, well, you should have discussed this with your architect prior, that they obviously didn't correspond together. They should correspond and they don't. And Tyvek rep was like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to warranty it. And GC's like, well, what the hell do you want us to do? He's like, pull 60 of those windows. And this guy lost his shit. I mean, but it was his own fault of, and probably a few other people's fault. I mean, tried to give him a heads up and I maybe could have missed it too. Luckily I didn't, but that was entertaining to see. Again, some of these attitudes, of,
You think that was just out of laziness? He didn't want to change the detail, or just
I think he
go. Like,
I think it was a little bit of both. It was a go, get these windows in. The architect's not going to be wrong, and for him to have that mentality in today's world of, the drawings are perfect, the architect's never wrong, is very short-sighted, because as we see, there's plenty of mistakes that get made in those drawings. But it was definitely
weather barrier
factors.
stuff too. Like,
yeah, one thing that probably is the biggest lawsuit things of, everything out there, weather barrier, water intrusion. That's one thing you definitely want to usually look at. But again, I think it was probably a little bit of ego, a little bit of go, and it definitely bit him in the ass. But take another 30 minutes, go through the Tyvek details, and you won't be there.
Yeah, don't just check a box.
Exactly. The checkbox mentality only, I wouldn't say it only works so many times, but yeah, if you checkbox mentality in today's world isn't really going to solve. You might solve part of the answer, but you usually in our world, you have to look at, unfortunately, 4 different things to come to a logical and rational solution to something. Looking at one set of, one drawing page isn't going to always give you an answer in our world.
Was there the transition from working for a GC to the subcontractor world? Was there one thing that was just difficult to understand, or?
Yeah, for sure. I remember our owner got into my ass on the first job I did, because I still kind of carried a GC kind of mentality of, obviously you guys in any GC, you QC the work to a certain extent, but you're more so designating or really telling the subcontractor where to go, what to do, and this is when you got to get it done by. And I going from the GC to the sub, that's kind of how I started, really kind of allocating crews or like my work. I was more so, hey, first floor framing, get it done by this date. And I lacked like the QC aspect, like sure in the GC world, like you do pre-drywall inspection, all this stuff. But, in the framing world, I have, in hindsight, not really in hindsight, but you have to check every RO, every window opening, every mechanical opening, countertop heights, countertop lengths.
Just more of a detailed
QC. A hell of a lot more detailed QC on steroids. And, unfortunately for me in retrospect, I depended on too much on the guys to be able to either know that stuff or assuming they know that stuff and where to look. And they didn't. And the first 8 or 10 units, I have 4 door ROs that are completely off. I got a mechanical opening that's completely jacked. the countertop height's at like 45 inches or something asinine. I don't even know what it was, but it's like, how the hell did you even get to this?
Is that just bad layout, drawings?
It's a little bit of both, but it also starts with me, just Nick going in there early and QCing this shit. And I was just had this GC mentality of like, oh, I'm going to wait till like MEPs are all through and go in there and QC prior to frame inspection.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, I got like 4 wires pulled through a wall that now I got to remove and a bunch of other shit. I'm like, okay, Nick, you cannot. And the owner comes in and he's like, Nick, what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I'm trying to like manage the crews. Like, I'm doing it right. He's like, no, dude, you have to, he's like, you have to check every RO, every one of these things, prior to
anyone else coming in.
Yeah, we don't give a fuck about the firecocker or whatever the hell it is. Like, you need to get this shit in before they start pulling wire, or now we're here now getting back charged out the wazoo because the wire, the Sparky's got to pull his breaker panel that doesn't fit, or it's on the wrong side of the wall, and a bunch of other shit.
It's a pretty funny perspective.
So, yeah, I quickly learned after that fuck up and after a good ass ripping that, okay, you need to check every piddly little thing prior. So that was a quick learning experience for me.
Instead of your GC brain just going, oh no, that's the framer's problem. They'll
Yeah,
get it.
exactly.
You're like, oh, that's me now.
Yeah. So I quickly learned.
So on the flip side of that, is there any systems or ways of doing methods that you brought from the GC world to the subcontractor world?
I think it was helpful from coming from the GC world of, let's take, for example, like truss layout, and understanding, where the plumber's going. He's going to have P-traps, where his laterals are kind of tying into, and if that's affecting a truss layout, or FCUs, making sure you have your proper spacing for your FCUs. Hopefully that gets caught early and in pre-construction with the architect and engineer. It doesn't always happen, but there's, aspects like that where, it's been helpful of, hey, I actually got to shift that truss about 6 inches because I know their P-trap's going to come down and they're going to lateral this way and not that way. And obviously, we know plumbing, mechanical drawings, those aren't, they're schematic, they're diagrammatical, if that's even a word. There's no scale that you can never scale those. And so kind of just understanding, MEPs and kind of where those are obviously going to land, more than likely land, and shifting things accordingly were advantageous for me. But I mean, other than that, I think, I kind of had to develop my own system of when I was QCing this stuff. So like nowadays, I'll go through units and I'll first only do architectural. I'll punch architectural. I'll punch ROs, pull dimensions, shower ROs. I'll do that first, because if I go in there and try to do structural, architectural, and verify trusses, I'll lose my mind. Like, I'd be in that unit for 45 minutes and I'd either go, brain dead, or I'd miss something because it's just simply too much to look at in that amount of space. So now I kind of just learned it on my own that works best for me, and everyone has obviously their own aspect, but I'll go in there, I'll solely punch a floor of architectural, get that knocked out, go back, do structural, make sure, if we got glulam beams, PSLs, stud packs, CLP, those are all going in the right spot. Get done with that. That's checked off the box. Go back, truss layout, how's that looking? Check that, and kind of more so like compartmentalize, those aspects more so than trying to do it all at once. Cause like I said, I lose my mind and go brain dead if I try to do it all in one go. And I'd argue it's more productive for me because I can just focus on that one aspect for those 8 hours of the day. And it tends to work better for me. So I kind of just, and I really learned that no one necessarily taught me that. I kind of learned by trial and fire, or losing my mind trying to do it all. And then the next thing I know, I missed 4 things. So kind of learn as you go and what works best. Everyone's going to have a different way of doing things, but that one has worked for me well thus far.
You mentioned that we talked technology a little bit earlier. How it seems like, well, I think this goes for not just construction, but everything. But we almost rely on it too much. And
Yeah.
we're missing stuff. Relying on that clash detection or BIM technology. Is there any piece of technology that you've come across in your 10 plus years of experience that has been a game changer for you and what you do or your crews?
Really knowing how to, and I learned really knowing how to overlay things were huge. I mean, not every company maybe has, the budget or the manpower or even maybe the brains to do a full BIM model or the resources, whatever it may be. So simply learning how to overlay, structural or architectural and let's say truss layout, that's huge. I can overlay truss layout, understand where P-traps go, making sure those trusses are landing on the walls where they should be, and the bearing points, if we have any interior bearing points, are landing on the spots they should be. We don't get, and I'd argue you really don't need to get too much more advanced than an overlay as long as you can kind of read it. And obviously it's a 2D aspect. And, 40 years ago, that's all these architects and drafters relied on were 2D drawings. They didn't have 3D. And it's kind of, like I said, is unfortunate because all these, great drafters or architects or whatever are phasing out now, and everything is so reliant on 3D. Like I said, it kind of takes the practical constructability aspect out of it. If whoever's using BIM, BIM's only as good as the person using it, really, at the end of the day. And if they lack maybe a little bit of, constructability, practical constructability experience, that it might bite them a little bit, or they're gonna learn by fire. But yeah, to answer your question, I think really overlays, you can see everything you kind of need to see, in my opinion, on an overlay, because you can overlay so many different things. You can do an RCP and mechanical and make sure your mechanical is going to land in the drops, or it's not going to hit an I-beam. If you want to do a structural overlay and mechanical, making sure you don't have a 12 by 12 duct going right through a 12-inch deep I-beam. So that's about as advanced as we get, and really that I get. Like I said, it took a lot of time, one, knowing how to properly overlay pages, because you're going to have different, you always have different dimensions.
What do you use to do that?
Bluebeam.
Bluebeam.
Yeah. And I learned to
Shout
always
out
use
to Bluebeam.
Yeah. Shout out to Bluebeam. I'll always use,
Thank you.
Always use grid lines too. Do not do a snapshot and then overlay it. Always go off grid lines, because all the scales are always different on pages. The scale on structural might be different from the scale on architectural, or your grid line's never going to change. They should never change. So that's always my home base. Pick 3 points. Those are your points. Bam. Good to go.
Is there a class or program that you have your eyes on that you want to learn or do or get a certification for?
I'd like to get better at SketchUp, if one thing. And that's like if anyone who knows like SketchUp, it's really just like a 3D illustration, like model drawing that you can do, but you can do so many things in it related to construction if you know how to use it and use it well. So I've always wanted to get better at SketchUp. And then I'd say back, I saw something with like Build Sync. I think it was on Instagram or something the other day, where it was like, more so I don't deal with it all that much, but like 5 years ago, it pretty much, vets your submittal process with kind of AI. So like essentially, if you have, let's say my framing package, is probably 300-400 pages worth of hardware and everything else. Now for a project engineer or myself to get the submittal from our material supplier, look in the spec section, look in the drawings, and then vet that would take God knows how much time, and how much shit I would miss would probably be absurd, just because of how much stuff you have to look at. But no, this app Build Sync if you're listening, shout out. But it essentially uses AI, from what I read, to a certain degree, to pretty much, you can upload your spec book section, upload the drawings, and upload, that contractor's submittal package. And it pretty much cross-references all 3 of those things at once, verifies, the material you're using, it's per spec, the whole 9 yards. And you can turn it into the architect, and hopefully you don't get it revised and resubmit. And apparently it's worked well for a lot of contractors. So I look at stuff like that, it'd be really advantageous, especially maybe not so for us. I mean, it still would be helpful for us, but especially, some of the PEs that are coming in, a lot of them, I mean, they're already flooded with, I wouldn't say clerical work, but essentially they're chasing down signatures, chasing down submittals, chasing down a bunch of stuff that would just, I mean, they'd still have to manage it to a certain degree, but not have to spend a day and a half going through 400 pages and highlighting items and cross-referencing and making sure they're checking out. So something like that, I think, would be extremely helpful.
Do you think it would be helpful just in the moment? Do you think people would lose some of that knowledge and practice? And
that's a good kind of counter to that of it gets so automated to a certain extent that, next thing you know, you don't even know what FCU model you're using that'll fit in that unit. You're depending on software so much. It's such a fine line of where your checks and balances are and who really still checks this at the end. And it's with any software. And I guess you have to learn how to use the software and use the software well. But again, also wanting, and I think you have to have a mentality of wanting to learn what's being installed in that building. I think that just kind of starts from a personal aspect of, hey, do I actually want to learn, the difference between, an Aquatherm and a standard FCU, because if you have whatever app or AI you're using, that's not going to tell you what the difference is of those two systems and what you need, especially, or the sequence of how to install it. So I think you still have to want to be a learner, for lack of a better word, of knowing the system that's going in and what all ties into it and why it's going to work a certain way. Because, I mean, sure, you can install the thing, I can install studs and whatever it may be, but if I don't understand the totality of what it's affecting and what it's carrying or whatever it may be, it doesn't really do much good. You got to want to learn why a system works and what it works with. And it takes time. And it's something that you got to be motivated enough to want to look at the end of the day.
That makes a lot of sense. When you were in your PE role, what was the biggest thing that you learned that you still use today in your current position?
Like I said, we were a small GC. I mean, I was a PE, but sometimes they'd give me some change order work. I mean, just kind of like vetting change orders and like verifying those with our contractors. And I don't necessarily, I mean, I vet a lot of change orders today, maybe not to the extent that some of your guys' PMs do. But I think really vetting, whether it be change orders or drawings, whatever it is, just making sure whatever you get, whether it be a change order, and I would get a lot of them as a PE once they kind of introduced me to that line of work. Because the first like 10 I would just be signing off on. Like, oh yeah, roofer had a TPO patch, sign off on it, $1,000, blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, my boss is coming in, Nick, what the hell? This was on the plumber. He relocated his roof drains, because their layout was jacked. This should go back on the plumber or whatever it may be. So really just getting things and learning how to vet them properly and vetting all the avenues that they could affect or what really led to why it got there. I kind of really was just taking it as, I mean, I would say taking their word for it, or not understanding again how it got to that point. And so I quickly learned, after giving away probably a few $1,000s worth of change orders that I shouldn't have done, of understanding looking at the totality of the change order or the problem or what drawing it affected and how it got there. So I'd say that's something that obviously I still carry today because there's so many aspects in construction that affect a certain line of work. Like I said, I mean, the roof drains might have changed. I didn't know that, or I really didn't maybe care to look. I didn't go up on the building and look if if the roof drains truly changed, or if they did change, why. Um, and so really just getting myself out of a chair because I thought I was like a PE, I'll be signing contracts here soon, blah, 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 blah. And I'd be getting these change orders, not going into the building and checking the work, checking why it happened. And, next thing you know, you're giving away thousands of dollars if you had just taken an hour of your time to go understand why that problem happened.
Is it just verifying and not taking people at their word, but verifying?
Yeah, it goes down to the trust but verify,
Yep.
right? And that's probably a great way to put it. Is I was young, and you learn by trial and fire in this world.
Well, you can get burned pretty quick.
Yeah, and
if-
make sure you don't make the same mistake twice. You're gonna make a mistake. You have to understand that, but try as hard as you can to not make that same mistake twice and learn from it. So it was really a lack of, I thought everyone in construction were, the most honest guys, and they would never try to take advantage of the GC and, anything else. And I quickly learned that's not the case. I mean, people want to make money in this world, but at the end of the day, you got to look out for your team, your company, everything else, and trust but verify. And so that's a great way to put it, Nick. And really, I think, to answer Cody's question, that's definitely something I carry now to a very high regard.
Is there anything that you've seen in your career so far, good or bad, where you walked into wherever it was and you're like, what in the world is going on here?
I
Wow, that's really cool.
had one job, and I wasn't the framer, so I'll just clarify that right now. I had one job where our framing subcontractor, we had, corridor floor joists, and, the corridor typically carries, kind of the same dimension. If you have a straight hallway, it's going to be 5'3" all the way down. And these guys had literally taken, and there was probably, let's say, 80 floor trusses going down this corridor that were bearing on both sides of the corridor. And the framing company literally had all the trusses obviously down on site. They just, and we had, like I said, 80 trusses that were the same dimension, but anyone who doesn't know trusses, there's specific truss ID tags that truss has to go in a very specific location. B54 goes here, and then B53 goes here, B52, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, they're engineered for
for specific locations, whatever loading is called out within that section. And these guys had literally gone down, and we had 80 of these things that were all the same length, because the corridor was the same length. And they literally pulled any truss that they really grabbed, and all of them were the same length, and just installed it all the way down the corridor. So we had like a B58, and then the next one was like a B160. And the third party inspectors coming in, and, from the naked eye, if you walked in and looked at the corridor, it'd be like, oh yeah, the floor joists are in, we're good, look good, floor sheathing's up, like, yeah, we're all good. And the third party guy comes in, first two trusses, like I said, it was like B58, B160, and third party looks around, and I'm like, I look up and I'm like, oh fuck. And the third party's like, what the hell is going on? And our framing subcontractors there, and I didn't even know what to say. I looked over at him just probably with, I don't know, either a death glare or just pure like, what is going on? Like, what did you guys, like, how does this happen? And he was just like, oh, it was the same dimension. And, we just put him down there. And we're like, No, dude. The third party was like, of course, justifiably so. Nope. Rip off all your floor sheathing, get all these joists pulled up. Apparently, it was the first time that our framing subcontractor at the time had ever looked at the truss layout, because obviously he wasn't looking at it when he installed them the first time. Had to rip off all the floor sheathing throughout, like I said, 80-foot probably span, and relocate these things, in the sequential order in the right spot that they should be in.
That's just got to be the biggest killer, not only for subs, but I mean for GCs too, is rework. If you can pause and just think, even if it's a day or two,
right,
but get it right, and not have to go back and demo and reinstall. I mean,
just slow down, take another. It probably would have taken another minute, or some guy just with his iPad open, looking at the floor joist, calling the guy, "Hey, B54 is next, B53 is next." Yeah, in retrospect, it's easy to get it right, but you just have to take.
Sounds like you just start with one and go
right.
Up from there.
It's not rocket science by any means, but yeah, if you try to take, shortcuts, and sure, I'm guilty of taking a few shortcuts here and there, but I mean, if you're going to take shortcuts, you're going to get bit in the ass eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a matter of if, it's when. And that definitely happened for that framing company, and that bit them in the ass bad. But then, to your point, Nick, it kills the project as a whole, because you had 4 people lined, plumber was ready to start roughing in that corridor.
Yeah, it's
momentum.
I've been thinking about this for the last week or so, but just the domino effect too. It's one mistake, one dumb mistake affects the next company and the next company, and it's a huge domino effect. And the other way too, it amazes me that these jobs finish, because for everything that goes wrong, there's also millions of things that go right, throughout a project.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it helps me to step back and look at that too,
Yeah.
I think it's the domino effect. Either way, it's amazing the repercussions from a mistake or doing things right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it can turn the project. One mistake can turn the project upside down. And again, I think it's feeding that mentality into your crews of, because everyone wants to blow and go, get it done. Comes down to the pressure thing again, but just understanding that if you leave this like shit for the next guy, it's gonna have a compounding effect.
It's exponential.
Yeah, and when I was back in the GC world, like, you're only as fast as your slowest guy, essentially. Yeah. So you can move as fast as you want. You might be able to beat schedule on hanging rock, but if you forgot to do your hydro inspection, well, now you're back to square one. Yeah, sure, you just hung rock, but oh shit, we just spaced our hydro inspection, got to tear it all out. Only as fast as the slowest guy.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, feeding that kind of mentality into your crews of, hey, don't leave something like shit. Take pride in your shim and shave, so the drywaller can go in there, be productive. He's going to be happy as hell. He might not vocalize that to you at the time, but it's going to make everyone more productive, and it's going to have a better effect on really, a construction site as a whole, and building a job site that people want to go to and want to work at, and that's kind of something that I also learned, is trying to create an environment that people want to go to your job to work. You don't want to be that GC or that supervisor that, fuck, I got to go to Nick's job today. I got to go to Cody's job. Fuck. You don't want to be that guy. And, creating a job site atmosphere that people want to go to, want to work at, they know they're going to enjoy their job that day. That's the right mentality to try to develop and carry on for everybody on the job site.
What's a common mistake that general contractors make that hinder framers?
Fuck, how much time we got?
Top 3 things.
Top 3 things. God, I don't want to say coordination, because that's such a, it's true, but it's such a broad.
Yeah, dial that in a little bit. Coordination between who?
it depends on where. So let's just take pouring slabs, for example. You guys are going to be in the process of pouring your first PT slabs here. And so obviously everyone on that slab, you're going to have the sparky, you're going to have the mechanical guy, you're going to have the plumber, you're going to have the framer. You're going to have obviously the concrete guys laying out embeds, the whole 9 yards, and understanding, who goes first and what's going to ultimately make everyone as productive as they can in the time allotted. For example, again, let's say
which is no time.
It's always no time. The time is never enough. But yeah, I mean, let's say, very simple example. Let's say we're snapping lines, the deck's ready to go. We're pre-snapping. And once we get done with pre-snapping, ideally the plumber should be going in, laying his sleeves down. But if the rebar guy has to run his bottom mat and that doesn't get communicated to the plumber and we snap lines, next thing you know, the next day we have bottom mat going on and then the plumber can't get his sleeves in because he got a bunch of rebar going in the way, that's going to be a problem. So, I mean, that's a small example of coordination that necessarily doesn't maybe pertain to framing, but God, there's just a smorgasbord of stuff. Or verifying concrete FF and FL numbers after the fact of a pour, and a lot of GCs, sometimes they carry that, sometimes they don't, but it's been detrimental to us at times because obviously we want, in a perfect world, the flattest slab that we can get as framers because it greatly affects the walls if something's out of whack. And we're talking, the tolerance ideally, for concrete, 1/4 inch and 10 feet, if you're 3/4 and 10 feet, there's going to be a huge, huge problem. And understanding that one, holding people accountable to QC their work, is a start. And obviously that should be taken, but a lot of the times it's just a go. And then next thing you know, I have second walls, stood, maybe didn't catch it. I probably would catch it, hopefully, on first floor of, hey, this slab's out of whack. But if you got the second floor on and next thing you know, one of your party walls is, down 2 inches, then your party wall on the left where I have a truss bearing. Now what the hell do you do? Now it's at a stop. I can't build any higher because I got to fix this problem. And it started with the concrete because someone, maybe one, didn't take the time to QC, or maybe it wasn't communicated that, hey, you guys need to QC this. Essentially check a box of, hey, this is going to meet the criteria that it needs to begin framing, and they're going to be set up for success. There's so many moving parts that have to ideally go right for people to be successful, in this world, and especially obviously in the trades specifically. If that kind of answers your question, maybe a little half-assed, but
No, it answers it. I think it all comes down to open communication and setting clear expectations.
yeah.
So, in regards to the floor flatness and floor level,
Yeah.
do you have you guys had a lot of issues recently?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yes.
What typically comes of those issues?
Well, I mean, obviously it's going to affect your walls and your wall heights. So for anyone who doesn't know framing, on a lot of these jobs of, that are 200,000 square feet, all these studs are pre-cut to a certain length. They're all, let's say, 104 and 5/8. And when your concrete is out of whack, like I said, for example, 3/4, well, that just in only in a certain spot, 'cause a lot of it's usually spotty where this happens. But again, if it's along where a party wall lands, I have studs that I can't really manipulate. I can't make any taller, and all the studs I just ordered, we have 20 bunks. These are all 104s. And now this wall's at 105 and 3/4. And then the other party wall next to it that's within the same unit is at 104 and 5/8. And I land that truss on those walls, and this thing is sloped like a roof, and we're on the first floor, then there's gonna be an issue. So that's one example. I see it a lot at like elevator shafts or stairwell core walls. The concrete guys, bless their heart, they're going to try to obviously finish, this concrete as best as they can and give us a solid, floor flatness, floor levelness. When you obviously it's harder to finish kind of just given your formwork and whatnot around these shafts or these cores. But a lot of times we have a wood, as of recent, we've had a lot more wood stairwells and elevator cores. I think, back in the day, it would all be CMU, get your CMU up. Usually that's pretty money for the most part. Don't really have to worry. But a lot of the times, just due to the finishing and kind of the formwork that's around there, it's extremely difficult for these guys to get, that 6-inch curb to where this 2x6 is landing on for this stairwell, that substrate, which would be the concrete, almost perfectly flat around it. It's kind of, you kind of just learn the areas that are typically, I wouldn't say missed or neglected. They're just hard areas to work at. But kind of over the years, understanding of certain areas within the building where the finishers struggle, just given space constraints or time constraints, whatever it may be. And making sure you just communicate that with the concrete guy. Hey, I've seen this on the last one, get missed, prior to the pour. Hey, can you guys, take an extra, half hour finishing this so I'm set up for success? Because next thing you know, he's going to get a call, of 2 weeks later saying, hey, come, shave down your concrete. He's going to be pissed as hell. But me, again, giving the guy a heads up, hey, I've seen this on the 3 jobs prior, if you can, give this a 1 over, if not a few, and just make sure it's going to be something that's going to be money that we can all be happy with, goes a long way.
Yeah. I mean, I come from the framing world, and that was way better put than what I would have said back then. So,
Thanks,
and it's
Cody.
been a learning. It's been learning.
Yeah.
It's always learning.
So you mentioned that you're a golfer.
I am a golfer.
Anything else you do to get away from the job and take your mind off of things?
Fly fish. I'm an avid
do you?
fly fisher. I grew up. I was fortunate enough to, have my dad teach me. And he came from Illinois. When he was, small town right on the Mississippi River. Came over here and fell in love with the mountains, like obviously everyone kind of does. And he introduced me to fly fishing when I was young, so I was able to pick it up. It's a extremely hard, I guess, hobby to undertake. You're not just throwing a bobber in a lake and letting it sit there and drinking a 12-pack of beer.
Yeah, a little more
finesse, a little bit more finesse.
Yep.
And also in a lake, you're not going to fall over and get your waders full of water. And next thing you know, you're not going to be there the next day. But no, I love fly fishing, love golf. I wish I would have maybe got into hunting a little bit more to a certain extent. I mean, I go pheasant hunting. I go on a trip every year, which is a blast.
every year that I'm not there.
Of course, yeah. You might have to talk to some people, get you on the list there. But yeah, fly fishing, golf, those are really my main two that, kind of allow me to take, my mind away from the havoc of a construction site every day. Although I love it, but I said, you
need a break.
You gotta learn how to take a break and
those
enjoy
are
your time off.
Perfect hobbies too, because they take a lot of focus, and when you're doing them, that's all you can really think about.
Yeah, and usually I don't have phone service when I'm doing them, so even if you called me,
perfect.
Yeah, that pheasant hunting trip is a special trip. It's a blast.
Yeah,
it's a good time.
Any final thoughts, final words you want to throw out there to anyone that might be listening, especially the younger crowd that is on the fence,
Yeah, I mean, kind of maybe how I mentioned earlier. I mean, just be willing to, give it a shot. And it's intimidating at times. And I was extremely intimidated because, you're walking into a foreman who might be 40 years old and been doing it for 20 years, and you don't know a thing. And I didn't know a thing. But be willing to take a chance and, take a chance on yourself and understand that you're going to make mistakes. You are going to make mistakes. You're going to continually make mistakes. I make mistakes every day. I am nowhere near perfect. But learning from those mistakes and understanding that almost all the people around you and whatever team that you're on, they want to see you be successful in whatever role that is. Whether you start sweeping after the drywall or sweeping after the framer, whatever it may be, take pride in what you do, and people will notice. And with that notice, you're going to grow in your career, and you're going to become, a better carpenter, or a better framer, or better electrician. So yeah, don't be, hesitant to make mistakes. They're going to happen. And, again, the college thing, like I said, it's fun. You get to go to a bunch of frat parties and do all that jazz, but, obviously college is expensive, and you can make a great, wonderful, and fulfilling career in construction. All you got to do is try to get your foot in the door, be willing to work, respect those people you work around, and you're gonna go far.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate your
absolutely,
time.
man.
Appreciate
Thanks for
you
having me
coming
on.
down.
It's been fun.
Thanks, Nick.
Yep.